Hi, I'm Angus Kress Gillespie, your host for Old Ways in New Jersey. Today we're honored to have as our primary guest Alexander Nadbitov, who's originally from Kalmykia, which is an autonomous region within Russia. And sitting in on today's program is Nikolai Burlakoff, folklorist and ethnographer, who's also spent a great deal of time researching the presence of Mongols in the United States. Alexander, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. You grew up in Kalmykia.
Yeah, I was born in Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, 1956, because 1943, our peoples, the Kalmyks, was deported to Siberia. And then that was so hard time, 13 years, hard time for my nation, for Kalmyks. And they was deported from Ural to Pacific Ocean. Also, my sister was born in Altai. My two oldest brother was born in Siberia, but there was a diet in Siberia. But they moved back to our motherland, to Kalmykia. I was born in Kyrgyzstan, yeah. That was the Soviet Union, if you remember.
Okay,
yeah.
so you were born in Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, born in Kyrgyzstan.
But then you grew up.
Grew up in Kalmykia.
Kalmykia.
Yeah.
So I assume then your first language is Kalmyk.
Yeah, my first language is Kalmyk, and then my second language is Russian.
Which is not surprising because all Kalmyks that I've known are bilingual. You go back and forth between Russian and Kalmyk with ease. And you've been living in the U.S. for about 5 years, is that right?
No, I live in the U.S. 15 years.
15 years?
15
oh, my
years.
mistake.
I came here in 2000.
And
November 2000.
In Russia, you were a journalist. You were a videographer.
No, in Russia, I used to work in the Russian government TV. I was a young guy when I came to the TV company. I'm starting like sound assistants, and then like
you worked your way up.
Way up, and then my last position was in government TV. Last position was I was manager, and then 90s we created our own company, small TV company that was called like Art TV company. Yeah, I was founder and owner of a small company, but it's not too long time. That was 4 years.
And then you emigrated to the U.S.
Actually, I came here 2000. We created some, как сказать, организацию по проведению 50-летий. That was the 15th anniversary to. Как сказать это? 50 лет эмиграции калмыков в Америку.
It was celebration of 50th anniversary of the Kalmyks coming to the United States.
That was 2001.
Oh, there was a celebration.
Yeah, 2001, yeah. And that's what he came for.
We make a committee, and then I was some part of that committee. That's why I came here to the United States.
There was a delegation from Kalmykia who came, and he was part of the delegation.
I see, and you were documenting the celebration.
Yeah, but when I came here, I'm like, мне понравилось здесь как.
I really liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
So I stayed.
Yeah. And how is life better in the U.S. than it was in Kalmykia?
When 90s was so. Economic in Russia was down. That was so hard living there. That's
economic hard times.
Economic hard times.
Yeah. So, is it okay if I call you Sasha?
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay because that's so surprising because in Russia, Alexander and Sasha.
It's the same thing.
Same thing, but here it's completely different.
Yeah. So, since you've been in the U.S. for the last 15 years, I understand you've been documenting the Mongol presence in America.
Yeah, first like 5 or 6 years, I'm filming, but only for my wife. My wife, she's a journalist. She's working in RTR, a Russian TV company. She like sometimes she maybe no she every year she came here make like some documentary about the Kalmykia community, Mongol communities, and then she asked me, could you help me please, could you filming, because that's so hard to send it to here, two people's, I mean videographer and journalist. Was why I was working like for her like a videographer.
And you've since moved on to do your own work on a freelance basis.
Yeah, you know what? I'm starting working with Mongol communities 2012. Sanjay Altam asked me to help him. He asked like to documentary Genghis Khan ceremony. That was my first experience working with the Mongol community, big Mongol community. And then from after that, I'm still working with the Mongols. I'm trying to tell the peoples how we live our community, Kalmykia community, Buryat community, Hazara, Tuva community, Mongols from Mongolia, Mongols from China. It's so interesting because send it some video to Mongolia. Last 4 or 5 months, I'm working with Mongol producer. We make a video Bembaho with New York City. Yeah, that was so like a big project for Mongolian TV company, Gera Entertainment. I hope the show is going to be start maybe in November.
Nice.
Yeah,
what I'd like to do is I'd like to share some of your work with our audience, and we have a half a dozen clips, and perhaps we'll introduce one at a time. I'd like to start that you have a clip showing the presence of Mongols in New York City. It's a kind of a tour. Can you describe how that came about?
Yeah, there was idea Bembaho, that in Cholon, he said that all Mongols asking some information about New York City. The best information is video, because you can tell him, but he will like, он может поверить, а может не поверить.
He may trust you or not trust you if you tell him.
Yeah, but if you show him the video, the beautiful New York City, they will trust. I think they will come to and visit New York City.
Sasha, our next clip has to do with Itigliov, who I understand is a kind of saint, and miraculously his body has been preserved uncorrupted, and there's a ceremony connected with honoring this saint. Can you tell us a little bit about this clip?
Yeah, that's so interesting too. Dashi Tigilo, his big name Lama, in 1920s, when after revolution, he's maybe I know like history. He maybe was meditated, and he see like future, what is going to be coming.
He was a visionary.
Yeah, and then he said, I will, как сказать, уйти в медитацию, нирвану.
I will enter nirvana, or go into nirvana.
And he asked like to put his...
and asked to be buried in a sitting position, in a meditative position.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And then и он сказал, что по истечении какого-то определенного времени его просто выкопать, посмотреть, и опять же туда.
And said, and after some time, he instructed his followers to unearth me, disinter me, and then rebury me.
So in this clip, we'll see a kind of puja or prayer service.
Yeah, there was a puja. There was some exhibit and read in the puja for because the Buddhists believe he's alive, still alive.
Wow.
But because потому что тело еще, ткани еще живые у него.
Because the body parts are still alive.
Wow. Sasha, next I want to take a look. You were a videographer at the 25th annual memorial ceremony for Genghis Khan, and you documented that event. And very interesting footage. It includes some of the shaman dance, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, that was so interesting because Mongols' early beliefs was shamanism. Правильно сказал, да, по-английски? То есть,
Before they were Buddhists, they were shamans.
And Nikolai, can you tell us a little bit about shamanism?
Shamanism essentially is a belief in local spirits, or spirits of locality, like the spirits of the lake and the spirit of the water, of the water, of the woods, of the fields. Yeah. It's essentially local deities. There is a more sophisticated version of shamanism called Tengrinism, where you have the sky god and the earth mother and more extended, if you want to say, pantheon.
It sounds almost comparable to Greek mythology, where you attribute natural phenomenon to spiritual beings.
Very much so, and also it's especially Tengrinism is very much related and conceptually to the Tao, the Chinese Tao.
Can you comment briefly on the costumes of the shamans?
Ну, костюмы, в принципе, как такого традиционного костюма у шаманистов нет, у шаманов, в принципе, нет же. Одевается так, как бы, перья.
There isn't any one costume per se traditionally. You put on feathers.
Самый главный инструмент это бубен, то есть через
But what is critically important is the drum, the circle drum. That every shaman has a circle drum.
Потому что он общается через него с потусторонним миром.
Because it's through the means of the drum that the shaman contacts the other world.
It's very interesting. Nadbitov, who is an independent businessman in northern New Jersey, is very active in an organization which he founded called the Tulip Foundation. And recently, in September of 2015, he organized an outdoor event at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, adjacent to the United Nations, which was a kind of overall view of Mongol culture. And I understand that you were there to document this. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I have to show the peoples about our life in the United States and New York City. That event only for businessmen, right?
Yes, this was a business networking group as well as celebration of Mongol culture.
And then he's bring to that place yurt. He was assembled the yurt. That was 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Yeah, that process was so interesting for me too. I was filming that process, and then я познакомился там с многими интересными людьми.
I've met a number of very interesting people there.
Yeah, and I understand that the yurt, it's made out of felt, and it's a circular thing, and it's almost like a tent where the nomads can bring it from place to place.
It's more of a house than a tent, really.
Okay. Yeah, and then that's summertime tent, which was in that place, because nomads has like a two of different kind of two, summer and winter.
So the winter yurt is more insulated and more sturdy.
And we have like a machak, который греет.
There's a fire and a stove.
So it's really quite comfortable even in a harsh climate. So this yurt was brought into New York City. It's kind of interesting because there's a trend in Mongolia itself where the nomads are moving to the cities. So we have a sort of... Sasha, we have one more clip to cover here, and that's the one at the Dag Hammarskjöld area outside the UN. part of what Nadbitov was trying to do. There was a fashion show. Can you comment briefly on the fashion show?
The fashion show was there. They show like a tradition Mongolian costumes, tradition Kalmyk costumes. The models was professional and non-professionals. The kids, Naran's kids, son and two daughters, was like models over there. That was my first experience to filming the show, fashion show.
Well, I understand these Mongol costumes involve a lot of intricate handmade embroidery. I assume it must be expensive for these costumes.
Yeah, the costume is so expensive because it's ручная работа.
It's all handwork.
And the handwork is so expensive.
I would like to have one, but I think it's outside my budget. Sasha, your work is very interesting, and I predict that in years to come, this will be very valuable documentation of Mongol presence in the United States. So I want to thank you for your good work in doing this. But I want to turn to Nick. Speaking of documentation, I understand you recently received some kind of a grant from the New Jersey Council for the Humanities. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the council has been very kind to us. We had a project led by you of trying to develop an archives in conjunction with Rutgers of the Kalmyk presence, but also other Mongolian groups who may be in the United States, and of the materials that is extant in the community and archives of that.
Now, this all got started with the New Jersey Folk Festival.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what took place at the Folk Festival?
What happened was that in 2011, the New Jersey Folk Festival presented the culture of the Kalmyk community for the first time, as far as I know, on that kind of a venue, and a large venue, with a participation of Buddhist priests. In fact, all the priests from Howell came up, and Howell is the epicenter of the Kalmyk Buddhism in the United States. I think there's something like a dozen different priests serving the needs of the congregation, monks. And then there were also exhibits. There were 3 yurts. One was built especially by the community. One was a Kalmyk yurt that was produced in Kalmykia that a nomad travel was kind enough to lend for the event. And then Naren Badushev, whom we mentioned before, has produced a yurt from Mongolia, or a ger as the Mongols call them. They call them gers. And so that started the whole idea of, we've got an incredible cultural resource here that's very important both to the history of New Jersey and the New Jersey public, just the variety of different cultures that are found in New Jersey. And also, it could be very interesting to people in Kalmykia, because, for example, they have the very famous museum of Kalmyk culture, the Palmov Museum, and so maybe some kind of a cooperative arrangement can come so that scholars in Kalmykia can study the diaspora and how the diaspora preserved certain things, lost certain things, changed over time, and some of it has been re-imported back to Kalmykia, which is a very interesting. So, for example, taking a different ethnic group, St. Patrick's Day never was a big celebration in Ireland until they copied the American St. Patrick's Day in Ireland.
Yeah.
And now it's a big holiday.
Yeah.
Mostly celebrated by a lot of Poles who immigrated to Ireland.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a very interesting process. And so the Committee of the Humanities has, in order to help us put on public events, so for example, we will do an official kickoff of this archiving project at the Chinggis Khan ceremony in Princeton Sanj was kind enough to give us a little bit of time so that you could say a few words about the project and really bring it community and involve the community. So hopefully Sasha will work with us and help us out in years to come so that we can build a good base of images, of words, of writings and artifacts.
And I understand you're going to deposit some of this information at the Rutgers University Research Archives.
Right. It's the Alexander Library archives that have been very, very kind, and we're trying to work out some kind of a program so that can be preserved, both the written materials and hopefully also sound materials. We're really hoping to work with Gordon Bach, who's been recording Kalmyk music since the 1960s, and also with some of the other representative. The MACA, the Mongolian American Cultural Association, is interested in participating. So it's a question of getting the word out and involving the New Jersey public in this, that the Committee in the Humanities is helping us, and also we will be having an exhibit at the Douglas Library, which has been also an event that will help promote.
Yes, a focal point. Yeah. Is there any fear that the children of the Kalmyks in America may be drifting away from their heritage?
It's more than a fear. It's a reality to a degree. The question is what can be preserved, what can be maintained, because you mentioned, I think earlier, about nomads. Essentially, Kalmyks began as a nomad culture. And then over the years in Russia, and now definitely since the Soviet times, it's been greater and greater urbanization and modernization. So you have a totally different relationship to nature. You have a totally different relationship to objects. For example, I just recently finished a book on Kalmyk tea, which was a necessity of life in a nomad. They would start a pot of tea and then drink it all day because that's the way to keep going and instead of lunch and breaks. But now it has become a ceremonial and symbolic object. So it's a question of what will survive, how it will be survived, and so that process of acculturalization, I would say most of the youngsters, they're Americans.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, they have some Kalmyk knowledge. The most important in a Kalmyk community, the most important aspect is, of course, their Buddhism, their religious practice.
That should be probably the last to go.
That probably will be if it goes, and hopefully it won't.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that some people don't realize is that Kalmyks brought the practice of Tibetan Buddhism to America. So they were pioneers. Many of the famous Tibetan Buddhists that you know of in America, such as Robert Thurman or Jeffrey Hopkins, they all studied in Howell, New Jersey. That's where they started.
Students, right? Geshe Evangel students.
Yeah, Geshe Evangel students. And there is a monastery begun by Geshe Evangel in Washington Township.
So it's very important that this preservation effort goes before it's all lost.
Yes, and so I think the Kalmyk community and all of us are grateful to your leadership in this.
Thank you. Sasha, I want to thank you for your participation and for your good work. Please keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. I will.
Thank you, Nick, for your help.
You're quite welcome. Thanks.